Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the zoo. The minions with me tonight are Useless.
Hello, how goes it?
And Adam.
Greetings.
And of course, I'm the keeper for the night, Sanguine. How are you guys doing tonight?
Well, alive and kicking.
Always better than the alternative.
Yep.
Wait, what did you say?
You said alive and kicking. So
always
better than the alternative, which would be dead and stationary.
Yep.
I thought he said a live chicken. Like, oh, that's all right.
I ain't no chicken, man. Come on.
Hey, did you see that? Did you see that tweet about? I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself, Sanguine?
I'm doing decent. I had a good birthday yesterday, and now I'm just finishing plating up my dinner, which is a pork shoulder steak with cilantro lime rice, a couple of tortilla chips with some cheese melted on them, just real simple nachos, and then a little bit of extra cheese sprinkled on the rice.
Cool.
Sounds
good.
good. Yeah.
I made a enchilada lasagna because I couldn't roll the enchiladas.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, I had a cheeseburger from fucking Culver's.
The butter burgers are decent, though.
Yeah, they're all right.
I've never been there, so.
I only had like half of it. Fucking pretty greasy.
For me, the thing I have to get when I end up hitting a Culver's are their malts.
Yeah, I heard that. Are there custards or something like that?
Yep. Yeah, they have custards and malts, and both of those are really damn good. Then again, I'm a sucker for malts.
Yeah, once everything opens up again, it'd be nice to sit down and actually try one of those. I still have not tried a custard, and I would like to try one. There's a custard shop around the corner, and I want to give it a shot. Yeah,
custards are delicious. They're effectively a bit more unctuous version of ice cream.
Yeah. They're pretty easy to make, too, if you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to ask a strange question. When you eat an apple, do you eat the whole thing, or do you leave the core?
I typically leave the core because the apple seeds are...
Well, I know the apple. I take the apple seeds out, but I eat the whole core, so... Because it's edible, so,
Yeah, it is technically edible.
The way you phrased it was just kind of like, do you eat the whole thing or do you eat the core? And it's like, well, eating the core would be the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I know most people leave the core behind,
Yeah, but would you leave out the core? Would have been something you would say. Shit. No, but yeah. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends. I used to work with a guy who did that all the time, but he was ex-Marine. And you know what? Honestly, he's the one who started me out. I mean, I had little hints and glimmers there of Adam Jones, but I think he was the one that kicked me down that path.
Yeah.
Marines. Seems about right that it's a Marine that does that.
Yeah. He knows shit that some other people wouldn't. Yeah. And and especially the way he said it, just nonchalantly, like, you don't know about this, and I'm like,
yeah,
what?
And yes, Elwin, the seeds contain a cyano compound.
Yeah, it's not enough to harm you, though.
Not enough to harm in the small amount that the seeds contain in the average apple, but if you eat too many seeds, then yes, it is enough to kill you stone dead. And the core is technically edible. It's just not the nicest texture.
Yeah, it's a bit woody.
I mean, you can eat it, but
also the broccoli stems are edible too. Because I usually take the skin off those and pickle them. So you have pickled broccoli stems, which is pretty good.
Yeah, you can eat a lot of parts of plants that a lot of people tend to discard. Like when you top and tail an onion, throw that into water that you're making into broth. It'll flavor it up just as nice as the rest of the onion, and that way you aren't wasting that.
I mean, I was gonna say you can eat the sunflower seed, shell, and you can still eat that. Usually people spit them out, but
It's
not
very nice that people spit it out.
Yeah.
You had to bring up onions though, so.
Yeah, because you top and tail onion.
I feel like that's a personal dig.
So you don't even like sweet onions?
No, I don't eat. I don't eat any kind of. I was actually, you know what? I was Sanguine. You'd like to chat with this dude I work with. He likes to talk to me about. I think he's Thai. He likes to talk about, food, like cooking foods. And today he stopped me and he was showing me he made this. It was like, egg and tomato and man, it was a green. Because I thought it was an onion, but he said it was a green. Green tomato. He had like two different types of tomatoes in there. But then he was like, "Oh, but you want to see onion?" And he showed me this curry that his wife made, and she used this big green onion. He's like, "Yeah," and we chopped it up like that. And I'm like, "Bro," first off, it's like I just clocked in. I don't want to be hungry right now. But the other thing is like, I'm like, "Hey, dude, I'm not a fan of onions. I don't like onions. I won't eat it. I won't eat it if it has onions." He's like, "Are you serious?" And he pulled the same thing you did. "Oh, I'm gonna bring a dish, and you're gonna eat it, and you're gonna like it, and it's gonna have onions in it." I'm like, "No, you're not, because I'm not gonna eat your fucking food." I'm like, now you just told me like I'm not gonna eat your food.
Like I said, you just need to give it a try.
Yeah.
Hell no. Nope.
Guess your taste changes as you age, You might like it now.
It's probably just someone had not cooked off the sulfurous compounds in the onion, because that's normally what people mean when they say that they don't like onion. They don't like the raw onion taste.
Yeah.
Whereas if you cook off all the sulfur,
like a nice caramelized
with that nice caramelized jammy onion.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like a bloomin' onion looks kind of good, but at the same end, it's like, yeah, maybe I'm psychologically scarred. Hey, maybe that's why I have these afflictions. It just like I just mentally encapsulated this horrific onion experience, and I just pinpointed it into this one corner of my brain, and then it's gotten so bad that it's like.
An onion brutally murdered your family in front of you.
Yeah. Except I don't turn into Batman. I turn into Adam Jones. Oh man.
Well, I made like a steak sandwiches the other day. Made caramelized onions on it. It was pretty good. Well, and I also put yum sauce on it.
Hold on. Assassin of the Grey says onions are good for you. What are you, French?
Yeah. Well, have you ever had them yum sauce?
No, I'm talking about
it's actually pretty good.
the French
it's like
battle song that they had, where they're singing about their onions are the greatest.
Leave it to the fucking French to have one of their battle songs be about our onions taste fucking amazing. Fuck you.
Well, they do love their food.
Yeah.
Everyone else is talking about how many times they've kicked this group's ass and that group's ass. The French, no, have you tried our food, man?
Dude, have you tried this onion? Let me tell you.
Well, I've been trying to find this cheese called a halloum cheese. It's cheese you could grill because it doesn't really melt. Halloumi, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to try that because it sounds good,
Yeah, the common way of referring to it without saying halloumi is bread cheese.
Bread cheese, okay.
Bread cheese. God, it comes in the form of bread too? Oh, wait, it does.
It looks like a bit of bread, yeah.
Yeah, because I want to try to grill like a steak and serve it with some collard greens. That sounds pretty good,
Oh,
Yeah, it's
hey,
standard to
watch
grill the
watch out for the
cheese and
frog
then
legs and snails, sir. We don't want
brush them
to
with-
be painted racist.
You grill the cheese, brush it with like a bit of honey,
Yeah.
cook it on each side with that. That's a fairly standard preparation.
Nice. I just gotta find it because my store says they have it, but it's never there. So.
A lot of them tend to have it almost pre-grilled when you look at it,
Oh yeah.
where it has kind of that rippled, caramelized looking outside already.
Yeah. Okay.
But you can grill that back up, no problem, and it's delicious.
Yeah. There's all foods I want to try out there.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
And
try
yeah.
that spiky fruit.
Which one?
The dragon fruit.
There's
the
like
one that
20 different spiky fruits.
The one that supposedly smells really bad.
Oh, durian.
Duran.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I heard it's
durian
pretty
fruit.
good.
If you can get past the scent, it's supposed to be very tasty, but it is supposed to be one of the worst smelling foods. It's
So prepare it
not.
outside, huh?
It's not quite surströmming in its horrendous smell, but it's supposed to be rather bad. And in certain countries, it's actually banned from eating it within a certain distance of airports and public buildings.
Yeah, I'd probably eat it when I have a really bad cold and I can't smell nothing, and I'm all stuffed up, and I'm like, and I'll just like, oh, now is the perfect time to try this durian, and I'll chop it up. I probably won't taste the niceness because, you know, of the cold, but I could say I'd ate one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's an Asian thing near me. It's not really just a market because a market doesn't do it proper justice.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen images of like a street market in China or in pretty much anywhere in Asia?
Yeah, like in movies and whatnot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Think of that in a building.
Oh, okay.
So
It's like a flea market.
Kind of, but almost more ridiculous. And
Oh God,
it's
is that possible?
oh yeah, this place. You go through one side of the building, and from that side to the other, you'll walk through like electronics stores and clothing places that have all kinds of different clothing, different weird art stores and like Asian curio type places. Then from that room, you'll walk immediately into the next section, which is their farmers market type area, where you can find durian and all the different herbs and green onions galore and different greens here and there. You can find rambutan, you can find lychee, you can find logan, you can find all kinds of shit in that place. It is amazing.
Nice.
Then you walk into the next section, and again, you're just tossed into this odd mix of clothing, electronics, people that buy and sell jewelry, and just random other things, all tossed right up upon each other effectively.
Nice.
Then you get to the far side, and it's just an entire wall of food places. And you go down, and they have absolutely amazing smoked ducks that they do there. They have smoked chickens. They have Hmong sausages, which is the nationality, the specific nationality that this is. It's Hmong, or it's a Hmong group that does it. So Hmong, Hmong. And absolutely amazing. They have pho. They have just ridiculous food that on Wednesday I went there and ate my lunch there. Oh my fucking God. Yes.
Oh yeah, I love pho.
Mm-hmm.
One of
Absolutely delicious.
Asian food in general. I don't know.
Yeah. And this place is amazing for that because it is like 30 different, effectively Asian street food stalls with a permanent site.
Nice.
So, like I said, they have whole smoked ducks, whole smoked chickens. They have the various sorts of sausages that they like, which are amazing. They have meatballs, they have pho, they have rice bowls and various other types of soup, and it's just holy shit. Especially since you can go in and get an absolutely amazing meal that will fill you up proper for like $14.
Oh, ain't bad. Now, do they also have the micro bars in there too? Like they do in Japan, with the micro bars?
Oh, they don't have the isekai.
Yeah.
So, or Nisekai, sorry. Nisekai. Isekai is you get hit by a bus and suddenly you're in a fantasy world. Nisekai is the tiny little bar with fantastic alcohol. And that is something that I wish popped up in the United States. Nisekais are amazing. But they don't have any bars in that particular venue. But yeah, the food is just absolutely amazing, and they have like 6 different boba tea places.
Yeah.
Which
I'm not a big fan of boba tea.
Is it the tapioca pearls that bother you?
Yeah. I like tapioca, but I still don't like it drinking it. It's just weird,
Then you can go for either the teas that don't have the tapioca in them, or most of those places there have like the green apple jellies and things like that. You can get lychee jelly is delicious as well.
I always want to try that grass jelly they have.
Grass jelly?
Yeah, it's like a drink. I saw them. A YouTuber was having it.
I'm not sure if I know which one you're referring to.
You ever hear the band Green Jelly?
Nope.
I have not.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah. At least I don't think so. Let me double check, see if I've heard a song and I just don't know that it was them.
Yeah, dude, look up Green Jelly, Three Little Pigs.
That auto completes when I look it up.
Yeah. They weren't really that big. This song was pretty fucking... It was a thing.
Yeah. Doesn't sound familiar. I have it playing in another window to see if it sounds familiar. They're really focusing on pig ass.
Yeah. It was the song. It's because we're not playing the audio. For those who don't know, it's a rendition of the Three Little Pigs. Little pig, let me in. But it's like a death metal, heavy metal band.
Yep.
And the music video, because this was around, this was around the time when around when MTV was getting big, and so music videos were the thing. And I mean, I guess they still are somewhat, but yeah, see a claymation of Three Little Pigs, and it's pretty brutal.
It's like the people that did Wallace and Gromit had an acid trip and decided, let's tell the Three Little Pigs story.
It's crazy. They did another
those
song.
Wallace and Gromit things are awesome.
I did not like Wallace and Gromit.
Really?
Oh, you didn't?
It's their face looks so weird.
Oh, they're just too creepy.
Yeah, it's too British for me.
No. If you want to talk too British, I've shown you before, Adam, and I'm pretty sure I've shown Useless. But in case anyone hasn't seen Mr. Nosybonk, let me pull up a picture of Mr. Nosybonk.
Oh, God.
It is something that will scare the shit out of most people, especially when you consider this is shown to children.
Well, on Amazon Prime, you could watch a show called The Truth Seekers, which is a British show, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah, Mr. Nosy Bonk is part of the inspiration behind Jigsaw.
Yeah.
In his appearance, yeah, if I remember correctly, I saw they were saying that they took inspiration from Mr. Nosy Bonk when it came to how they wanted Jigsaw to look. So let me pull this up. That's a good image of Mr. Nosy Bonk with his effectively Boris Johnson hair. And let's see, Mr. Nosy Bonk. Is that one right? Yes, it is. There's Mr. Nosy Bonk. The thing up front that's covering one eye, yeah, that's his nose.
Tock.
What the fuck? They
He has
allowed
like
this?
a foot-long nose. Here, in fact, I'll get another image of Mr. Nosy Bonk. This one is going to be Mr. Nosy Bonk with a child for scale. So let's pull that up and screen share.
And we all wonder why the British people are weird, you know?
Ah, this one's small.
Oh,
Let me
please
zoom
don't.
that right in for everyone.
The kid's like, what the hell?
That's Mr. Nosy Bonk.
Good God Almighty!
Like I said, he has like a 1.5 long nose, creepy dead eyes, Boris Johnson's hair. And this was a children's show character. Mr. Nosy Bonk. And there's an episode where you find out that Mr. Nosy Bonk is apparently some sort of weird plant person, because Mr. Nosy Bonk starts growing Mr. Nosy Bonks. Or at least it looks like he's growing Mr. Nosy Bonks. It isn't confirmed that he's growing Mr. Nosy Bonks, but he waters a series of plants, and all of them look exactly like Mr. Nosy Bonk's nose after he waters them. So I choose to believe that he's watering a new crop of Mr. Nosy Bonks.
Yeah, to take over the world.
Yep.
Of course!
But yeah.
Well, thanks for inducing
Nosy.
nightmares, sir.
Yep.
Yeah. You can do
Just
that another
like-
night. You can go.
Everyone's seen the Nameless Man from the Adventures of Mark Twain, I think it's called.
I'm not sure. It's been a while since I read Mark Twain.
Oh, this isn't Mark Twain's work. This is the Adventures of Mark Twain.
Oh, yeah, I never read that then. Or I've seen the show.
Which is a children's claymation that I think was designed to scare the ever-living hell out of children.
Yeah.
Because, here, let me pull up a good image. It's The Mysterious Stranger, that's what he was. Which is based off of a Mark Twain book, as pretty much everything in that show is. But, here, let's pull up this image. There's one of them. Pop up another one. I'm just going to pull up like 2 or 3 images of his face in different forms so that I can flick between them and show you guys the mysterious stranger from the Adventures of Mark Twain, because everyone needs to have a little bit of what the fuck were they showing children? But I still say that we need to continue showing children this shit. Children need to get used to really creepy goddamn images. So that's how he starts.
What the fuck?
And he does not have a head. He's just holding the mask in front of empty air. So that's how he starts. Then, as the story goes on, because he's telling the children a story as he's on screen, things start to change. So
he becomes Two-Face?
that's an image halfway through the story, effectively, where it's someone who drew his face halfway through the story.
Huh.
And then let me show you guys his face at the end of the story when he's getting angry. Oops, wrong one. Let me click back through, and it's this one.
Wow.
Dude, where do you find this shit?
Looks like he's melting.
Oh, this is something that I watched ages ago. It's The Adventures of Mark Twain.
He has weird hobbies.
And he has a very kind of odd-pitched voice the entire time that kind of warbles up and down depending on what he's saying in the story. And it's just him talking about these clay people that he brings to life. And he starts off just kind of helping them along. And he makes these clay people and they start expanding into the world that he made. And they're happy. They're doing cool things. They're building structures. And he starts causing natural disasters around them, causing them to go to war with each other, just twisting them until at the end of his story, he's killed all of them.
Nice.
And it's just, what the fuck? Because the mysterious stranger is supposed to be Satan.
Oh. I gotta find more books to read. Some more stories.
But yeah.
I'm glad,
You first, Adam?
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, I grew up watching like, you know, Heathcliff and Top Cat, and I don't know what the hell the Adventures of Tom Sawyer was, man.
We all have our own hobbies, Adam.
Yeah.
It was the Adventures.
Sanguine just likes the weird.
Twain.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe I'll check that out one of these days.
Yeah, The Adventures of Mark Twain. I know that for a
Mark
while,
yeah,
you could find it on Netflix. Not sure what other streaming services got it at various points, but and it might still be on Netflix. Not sure. It is one of those, what the fuck? This was made for children things. And I still say we need to kind of have those elements in children's cartoons. And we don't have them as much anymore.
I've been watching cartoons I watched as a kid. I was like, there's a lot of sexual endos in here.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. So,
yeah.
the things you notice when you're older.
Innuendos for the adults.
Yeah.
And just properly, what the fuck? This is dark as hell out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because think about classic Disney. Classic Disney always had those really trippy and insanely dark moments of the nadir.
Yeah.
From Dumbo, which had two main parts of that, where his mother's first locked up, really goddamn dark.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Pink Elephants on Parade.
Yeah. And there's always the Bambi, because that's one of those.
Yep. And Aladdin, you had the happy moments of Prince Ali, fabulous he, Ali Ababa. And then it went from that to there were really dark moments of Aladdin. where it was kind of like everything's getting fucked up. Jafar has what? Holy shit. And it gets really dark and really disturbing.
Yeah. Well, same with Billy the Beast when he had to fight off that mob, you know.
Yep. Beauty and the Beast had that moment. And you had that moment in the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Frollo's song. Hell yes, Frollo's song. One of the best villain songs of any Disney movie.
And like the real story of the Little Mermaid is freaking crazy too, you know.
Yep, and they had their dark moments in the Little Mermaid movie as well, because there was the dark, depressing moment where it seemed like Ursula had won and she was about to kill everyone.
Yeah.
You need those moments in children's movies. Because those moments serve a damn good purpose. In the children's movie, when you see that everything's gone to shit in one of those situations, it is always just a moment away from when everything turns around.
Yeah. It's pretty much saying don't give up no matter what, you know.
Yep. And yeah, the Black Cauldron had a fuck ton of those moments.
Yeah. I've never seen that movie.
Every classic Disney had those dark moments, and they're needed because, like I said, it was always right when that moment hit, you knew that things would get better, but it was shitty at that time. And if you don't have that message early on in life, if you don't know that things are going to be hard at times, but when things are hard, you can always make things better. If you don't get that message, you become fragile, because when things get bad, when everything seems its darkest, you don't have that idea that, well, if I can make it through this, everything will get brighter.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you don't challenge a student when it comes to learning in school, and they're just skating by on their natural ability, the first time that they actually have to try to learn something, they'll feel like they're a failure. And what's worse, not only will they feel like they're a failure, they won't have the skills in order to actually learn. Because everything's just been taken at such a slow pace that they never had to learn how to learn. And if you don't learn that early, it is fucking hard to learn that late.
Yeah. I think that's the problem with the parents, you know, they coddle their kids or they let them watch certain things because it's, you know, too much.
You know, that actually, because usually on like Mondays and Fridays, I try and think of things to, you know, topics to speak about if I get a spot on the show, and jeez, usually I write them down. But there's this thing about how. Oh shit! Okay, could you rephrase, because it's like right at the tip of.
So, was it more about what I was saying with Disney movies, or more about what I was saying with education?
Well, that's the other thing too, is I wanted to talk about fucking Black Cauldron because you brought it up. I'm like, oh hey, yeah. But the last thing you said, what was the last thing you said?
The last thing I said was, in order to actually have someone grow and learn, you have to kind of force them right on that cusp of comfort and discomfort, so that they actually have to try to learn. They actually have to figure out how to learn something, so that later on, they know how to learn. They already have those skills, and they're able to learn whatever the fuck they want to learn.
Wait. Okay, so it was 2 bits One, it was a conversation between Eric July, Young Rippa. If you watch his shows, go watch him. With his take on Twitter between some goofballs out there, and I don't know if you guys caught the actual Justice Warriors debate with him, Lauren Southern, Destiny, and the name escapes me.
Let me quickly check, and I can tell you. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but it's in my queued up videos to watch tonight.
Yeah, I was listening to it on the drive home from work, and there was plenty of times that I was actually sitting there. I was cleaning up my desk and throwing out the trash, and as I was walking to the dumpster and shit, I was typing in there. Remind me later. We'll get to that. Fanatic, yeah. And their debate on racism, and they had brought up schooling, or like how like, oh geez, okay, so it was that, and essentially like personal responsibility, right? And also dealing with variables that are outside of your control. So it's a half and half. So geez, man, I really should have written this down. Usually
Something
I write this shit down.
How you can't control everything, but you can control how you react to things. Is that sort of in the area that you were going?
Well, yeah, and also because it seems like a logical stop for a lot of people is past grievances, and they render it all as like a stopgap, like and then so you're not looking at the problem as a whole. You're looking at you're taking individual cases and then tethering it up into what you want the argument to be, and it just doesn't. You can't. That's not a force. That's not going to do anything,
And they always very carefully choose how far back you can go to look at past grievances, because it's always, you can look back this number of years, but don't you dare look past that number, or look back at that number plus one, because fuck you, that's not allowed.
Unless it's the other side doing it,
Well, can I? Okay. Damn. See, because it was literally like the timeline was the initial start of the thought process, and I'm sorry, I might have had a bit of whiskey before, and I'm a couple of bowls in. It's Friday night. But no, these two thought processes are joined, but the start of it was watching this debate with these four about racism, and it was that when they were talking about the police, and then Destiny got all crazy about Lauren depicting, I guess, his side. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with any of these people other than actual Justice Warrior. I've seen a few of his videos. Don't really agree.
He has some interesting takes every so often, but on the whole, he's a good guy.
I find him fairly arrogant and egotistical a bit, but that's
part of
just
that's played up for character.
Yeah, I would hope.
It's kind of like Medicare. I find him a little self-righteous,
Metatron?
Medicare.
Oh, I was gonna
Medicare.
say you think the Metatron is playing it up? I mean, he might indulge in his Latin speak a bit, but no, he's either way, yeah. But see, now you got me on a whole fucking different track. That's
Sorry.
fucking but yeah,
So
and then Lauren,
between
and
those
then
four.
I know Lauren Southern because I know what she has done and
Mhm.
you know what yada yada. But I really don't. Like I said, I'm not sitting there watching her videos and listening. But either way, and Destiny,
More
the only thing,
religious consumer of her material, yeah.
yeah, all of these people. Like, I mean, the thing is, like, for a lot of it, I know a lot of people are watching these people, but
Mhm.
usually I'm watching goofy shit, and not
Yep.
like goofy like cat video stuff. I'm listening to like, have you heard about the Voynich manuscript and what it is and who is like that's the weirdo shit that I listen to. But either way, as a side, so they were arguing about the police and. Lauren was talking about how the cops were, oh, you guys are saying that cops just go out and oh, they see a black guy and they're ready to go and just arrest him. And Destiny was
Mhm.
like freaking out, like, oh, how can you say that? You're making it out to like we're saying that all cops are just these cartoon characters, like they're just going out, whoa, yeah, like the fucking police truck song, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, and then she was like, okay, well, so we're not saying that. And they got into like trying to back and forth it. And what I took out of it was what they're essentially saying is, at least what I'm interpreting it as, no. It's not that cops are buffoonishly going out there, racistly picking minorities and shit.
Mhm.
It's they're doing it because he goes into he was like, yeah, after doing it for some time, they pick up traits and then they do it unknowingly. And it's like,
Mhm.
so what you're saying is there so what you're saying is lobsters. No, but it's like what you're trying to say, dude, is that they essentially become racist because because of their experience
They become
during the
racist due to
job.
exposure, yeah.
Yeah, like that is the craziest fucking thing. I'm
Hey,
like,
Carlston.
so at
Yeah.
the end of the day, you're essentially saying, yeah, so eventually they become racist because
Mhm.
so there's no workaround. So it's the cartoon version. It's just
I don't
an
think
anime
noticing.
version.
I don't think
No, it's so
noticing a
weird.
trend makes you racist, though.
Well, it's not supposed to be. That's the
Yeah.
whole point. If it's like if you live in a bad neighborhood, you tend to pick up on the patterns.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
if the patterns just so happen to fit a different pattern, well, that's how it works, And you can't sit there and be like, nah, it's because they just they become racist and they don't even know it. And it's
Yeah.
like,
The problem
what?
is the problem with stereotypes is only when they're over applied,
Yeah.
because there's a reason why there isn't a stereotype of the goddamn Chinese, all of them are 9 feet tall. No one has that stereotype of Chinese people because they're shorter than average, not taller than average. Whereas you do have certain people that have the stereotype of black people. They're all gigantic because black people, on average, are taller than the average, not shorter than the average. Everyone agrees with this, right?
Yeah.
So you don't end up with stereotypes of things that are not at all visible. Now, the stereotypes become a problem if you have the stereotype that all Chinese people are really short, and then you meet a guy who's 6'4", and he introduces himself as, I don't know, let's say Wang Li. And you go, no, give me your real name. My real name is Wong Li. No, it isn't. You're 6'4". You aren't Chinese. No, I'm really Chinese. My name is Wong Li.
Well, hold on.
That is a problem.
Let's in that instance, let's clarify. I mean, at that point, that's you're being insultive, either
insulting,
knowing or unknowing. But like that's. I mean, you can be dense and be a schmuck, and be out there saying stupid shit.
Yep.
But I don't think that's a majority of people. Like, that's not.
I'm not saying that it's a majority of people. I'm
saying
no.
But that's what they were saying. That's what they were going at. Like, it's just like eventually you're just gonna succumb to this like weirdo fucking ideal. Like, it's just so stupid. And it's like, it's obvious you probably haven't really worked around people where there's like when I was doing deliveries and shit in Chicago, we're not talking about like everybody's working together because we're like, fucking Brad, we're like, holy shit, we don't have time to fucking sit there and be like, no, dude, the fucking dude. It's like, no, dude, it's just like,
can you pick up that side? I'll pick up this side. Let's
exactly. Like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna insult somebody, and again, insulting somebody, you're trying to hurt them verbally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty much the point of the insult. So you're gonna pick a trait. It's gonna be something. They're gonna use a weapon. Like, that's
when I said what I was saying with the stereotypes thing is that it's one thing to acknowledge a stereotype that Chinese people on average are shorter than non-Chinese people, for instance.
Hey, you can even see it in the statistics where they sit there and say, Asian people, sorry, you're gonna have to get a higher score to get into college.
Yep.
They're acknowledging it at that point.
Yep, the stereotypes that Asians are more studious is the stereotype that they're acknowledging at that point. But the thing is, you can kind of bear that in mind so that if I was to come up to you, Adam, and I'm telling you, okay, in the room next door, there's 4 people in that room. One of them is 6'6". One of them is 5'4". One of them is 5'10" on the button, and one of them is 6 foot. One of them is going to be European. One of them is going to be African. One of them is going to be from China. And one of them is going to be from Eastern Europe. Which one do you think is going to be which height? And if you went, well, okay, on average, African people tend to be on the tall side, so I'm going to put...
Man, I thought you were going to... I was just going to be able to answer.
No, if you want to answer, go ahead. Go ahead, I'll turn it over. What is going to be your answers?
Well, shit, I don't know. I would probably say, like, the tallest, the Eastern European, the second tallest, the African, and it goes European and then the Asian. But I would have also said, man, you should have thrown a mixture in there and had like a 5'2" and they're Central American. Oh, what are you gonna do? Dude, because it's just so, I don't know, the whole.
But yeah, that is a valid use of stereotypes. And then the thing is that once you go into the room and you see the people in the room,
it can be totally the reverse.
It can be the opposite of what you thought, and that doesn't suddenly mean no. That 6'6" Chinese man is not actually Chinese. He's really African or Eastern European. No, he isn't. He's actually Chinese.
Hey, he plays
That's
basketball.
where the issue comes in when it comes to stereotypes. It's when people over-apply a stereotype. Because it's one thing to bear in mind that, if you're talking about who's most likely going to have the highest SAT score, and you're given these 5 different groups, and you go, okay, statistically, the one that will have the highest SAT score is, let's say, Asian. It's either Asian or Ashkenazi Jew, I think, are the 2 highest SAT scores on record. Well, on average, rather. And you can go, yeah, if I'm placing my money on which of these groups has the highest, I'm going to bet that it's either the Asian or the Ashkenazi. But if you then put in a policy that says all Asians are going to get their score lowered and all black people are going to get their score raised, well, what if the highest score was a black person? What if the lowest score was an Asian? Just because, on average, that is not what you would expect, does not mean that that isn't what is actually happening. So you have to look at individuals in order to judge individuals. You look at the stats, the stereotypes, all of that shit, to look at people as a whole. But the moment that you're dealing with an individual, you have to deal with that individual. And it's infuriating how people don't seem to understand this. You'll have people that want to apply the general to the specific, and you have people that want to apply the specific to the general, and you can't fucking do that.
Nope.
Just because you know 4 people that they have an entire family, they haven't had any of these issues that you've said are common within this population, does not mean that those issues are not common within that population. Now, if the stats don't bear that out, okay, yeah, that's when the analysis starts to change. Like if it started being that, I think currently the group that has the highest fatherless home rate are black people, if I'm not mistaken here. If it started in the next 5 to 10 years that 99% of black families had a father in the home, guess what stereotype would disappear?
Oh shit! You know what? That actually brings me into the next thing that they were talking about, because on their and again, bravo what you said. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Which is I would say one of the issues that I think these people have. You people, no, but these people, just anybody who has this mindset where they can't.
The collectivist.
They have to have it either or. I think it's because they just can't fathom it. Like they just really cannot comprehend that that individual that you're thinking about that's not everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then everybody at the same end, like, yes, the everybody is not that individual. So you have to be able to look at all 3, you know. Yeah. But it goes right into what they were, because they were trying to do their final statements or whatever, and because I think Lauren had to leave, and and then they started talking about, well, why did this happen? Mm-hmm. And then I think Sean brought up, like, your ancestors, like it didn't have it doesn't have a weight on you. You're starting off at a bad footing, but you still have that opportunity to change, or something like that. But the other people were trying to bring it down to, like, but they're dealing with inferior schools, and there's no money to be had at the schools. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm like, well, both of you, it's yes and no. It's because it's on one end, yes, they have the opportunity, but it's much more than just, it really does take a lot of, like, self courage to be able to if you're really in dire straits, if you're living in a shit neighborhood with a mom who's living her life like she's, single with no kids, and you're taking care of your sisters or your daughter or your brothers or whatever, and it puts unnecessary stress on a lot of young people. And so it's a lot easier for them to fall into the wrong crowds, I would say. So it's much more than just, it's a deeper psychological thing in terms of, I'm not gonna say, oh, they need, support animal, blah blah blah. No, they need genuine help. A lot of these people need genuine help. But the problem isn't, or the solution isn't also just tossing money at them, because the money isn't going to go where it needs to go. It's these people are like the facilities themselves are already under control with people who are going to launder that money elsewhere. Not only that, but even, they'll open up a whole, like, whatever. And
the thing that I've never had a person be able to explain is, okay, so I will agree that inner city school systems are not the best school systems. I don't think anyone will argue with that idea. But the thing is that, the majority of that school population might well be black students or Hispanic students.
Yes,
I don't think many people will disagree with that either.
But that's the thing. That goes into the Norm Macdonald joke. God rest his soul. Where he was saying, where he was trying to tell these people, like, majority of poor people are black, and they're like, no, I'm going to ruin it. But he was like, and he's like, they're a small percentage, but there's a overwhelming majority of them are poor. So there's a lot more poor people. And they were sitting there like, whoa, you can't say that. And he's like, no, but that's when, I ruined
statistics, it's kind of even.
Well,
because there's rich black people and there's poor black people, just poor white people too.
But that's what they were arguing.
The thing is that when you look at the percent of the black population that's poor, they have a higher percent that is poor. I will not deny that. It is borne out in the stats. The problem that I have is that the solution does not fit the problem that they're diagnosing. Because when you're saying the problem is that they have really bad schools. Okay, so the way that you handle a problem with really bad schools is, if you're going to do this weird, we're going to increase points and decrease points, which I don't think should be done at all. But if you're going to do a policy like that, and you went, so we're going to look at the 10% worst functioning school systems in the nation. And any student coming out of that 10% are going to get this number of points tacked onto their score. Well, now your solution is actually dealing with the problem that you're saying is there. Because you're saying that these shitty school systems make it so that people don't stand a chance.
Hold on, real quick. But because I just got to remind you, there's this variable of, is the student willing to learn? Because again, you can work all this in on the facility side, but if the student is so distraught in their home life that they don't even give a shit about school, and they don't even see a reason to go to school, you have to find a balance in both of these sides. Otherwise, nothing's going to be fixed.
Which is why I'm saying that I'm not really for the idea of, well, let's just tack on points to this person's score arbitrarily because they're from this group of people. And in my example, where you're actually basing it off the school systems, it would be, well, they're from the worst school in the nation, so we're tacking on points. I don't think that would actually have the effect that you want, because you haven't fixed the problem. You've just stuck a plaster on a bleeding wound that doesn't do anything. You need to actually stop the bleeding, clean the wound, and then treat it. Not just, okay, you have a gaping chest wound because you got shot. So here's a Spider-Man Band-Aid. Just going to stick that on the bullet hole. That doesn't work because it doesn't actually solve the issue. But what's worse is that not only are they coming up with a solution that will not work in and of itself, the let's just tack on points and call it a day, but
it's going to draw it out.
It's going to draw it out, but that's not even the worst part, because the worst part is they're saying that the reason why this needs to be done is because, well, these students don't even stand a chance because they're at a shitty school. They aren't the only ones at the shitty school, and the groups that they're trying to tack points onto are not all at that shitty school. When you say we're going to give all black students additional points on their SATs, you're now talking about, yes, some of the students at the worst schools in the nation, but you're also talking about Barack Obama's daughters who attend the best school in the nation also getting the same bump to their SATs.
Yeah.
So that is not a policy that fucking works on the face of it from that angle, but not only are you giving that bump to people that do not deserve the bump by the rationale that you've given, but you're also not giving that bump to people that do deserve the rationale that's given, because those shitty inner city schools that we all acknowledge are not the best functioning school systems, to say the least.
Well, it's not just the school system, it's also culture, because a lot of black people say if you study or work hard in school, you're acting too white.
Yep, that happens as well, which is one of the reasons why the solution doesn't work. But
yeah,
like I was saying, it's not only that you are giving those points to people that shouldn't get them, because if it's the school system that's a problem, well, then if they're going to one of the best schools in the nation, they shouldn't be getting those extra points, should they? But then you're also not giving it to people that should, because, yeah, well, a lot of these schools do have, like, 60% African-American, or fuck that, I hate the hyphenated American, 60% black, you have 70%, 80%, 90%, depending on the school system.
Well,
like,
my school was 2% white.
Yep. And that's what I was just about to say, that those school systems that you're saying are horrendous and they don't give students a fair chance, if you aren't judging who you're giving those extra points to based on the school system, but on the skin tone, that means that there's students at that school that you say does not give people a fighting chance, will cripple them in the long run, that you are refusing those points, which you think helps people. I disagree. I don't think that they help people. I don't think that anyone should get those additional points. But if I were to accept your rationale, you would still be failing. You would be failing at what you're saying you're trying to rectify, which makes it a doubly damnable solution. It's kind of like the person who, I've said it before, this cures cancer in a petri dish. A lot of things cure cancer in a petri dish. A 9mm cures cancer in a petri dish. That doesn't mean that you go through the onco ward shooting all the patients saying, I'm curing cancer. Your life is saved. Because you've just shot them. You've just killed them. You haven't saved their life. You've killed them. That is not a valid solution.
Yeah.
I mean, their argument was, in terms of, that's proof of a systematic racism, but I'm looking at it like it's really not. It's just more of poor rulership, like poor, whoever's running the show is obviously incompetent and or has an agenda. I'd point more towards has an agenda in terms of making a quick buck, but
especially since a lot of the worst school systems in the country are some of the best funded school systems in the country.
Exactly. And
Washington, D.C. has either the highest or second highest per pupil price for education. And Washington, D.C. has some of the worst schools in the entire fucking nation.
That's why I think we should go to voucher system, make all schools like.
Well, hold on. But that's why it was like, what makes it racist though? It's not so much racist. It's a mixture of, because even Sean was trying to bring this up where it was like, because they brought up, what is black culture or whatever, and Sean was like, well, it's based off of Southern culture or whatever, and
Black culture changes depending on the area.
It's just there's
the overarching culture that people often ascribe as black culture. If you trace back its lineage, a fair chunk of it does come from old school Southern culture.
Well,
You guys know where old school Southern culture comes from?
What, Louisiana?
No. Old school
French and
Southern
German?
culture, if you trace it back, no. French, German, English, they tend to be Northern culture. If you trace back Southern culture, it tends to be a very specific subsect of effectively Scottish culture. Because and also a subsect of Irish culture. Because when you look at the majority of the people that settled in the South, you get a fuck ton of Scotch-Irish. And they brought over elements of their culture. You'll notice this in Scottish and Irish people to this day in certain areas of both of those countries, where how there's, well, let's see, what's a good example that is pop culture enough that people will know? Have both of you seen Snatch?
Yeah.
No.
Damn it. So I'll continue with Snatch for a moment, and then I'll come up with another example as it pops to mind, because one of you said yes, one of you said no. So Brad Pitt's character in Snatch is a pikey.
Yeah.
Do both of you know what pikeys are?
Well, no.
It's like an Irish gypsy,
Yes. They are Irish gypsies, Irish travelers, whatever term you want to use. They are a nomadic group in Irish culture that have a habit of settling things with their knuckles, to say it in the kindest way. So there's also a fantastic documentary that, Adam, you might actually really like this documentary, that I think is just called Knuckles. And it follows around one of the traveler family's champions in these bare knuckle boxing matches. And I believe his name is James, and I want to say it's the same as the author. I want to say it's James Joyce, but it might be Joyce and then hyphenated something else. It's something along those lines. Joyce is one of the major traveler families, though. But it's following around this one guy who is his family's champion. And whenever these families have issue, they end up doing... Adam, have you ever seen the pikey calls or the traveler calls on YouTube? If not, I'm going to send you videos of these because they are fucking amazing. For anyone who hasn't looked up pikey calls, and sometimes they're pikey call-outs or pikey challenges, traveler challenges, things like that, they go by a bunch of different names. Yeah. If you've never seen any of these videos,
I have not. Would you be able to post one, or?
Oh, I'll be able to shoot you a link to one. Here, let me do that while I continue explaining. So, with the culture of the pikeys, as well as, like I said, there's a number of other cultures that kind of all have this same bravado and bluster sort of culture, where if someone doesn't fucking respect you, You crack them upside the head. You break their fucking gob. You go after them because you can't let them not respect you. And does that sound anything like a certain culture that is prevalent nowadays?
Kind of sounds like gang culture.
Yeah. If someone doesn't respect you, well, you have to immediately stir up and you're not respecting me? Well, fuck you. We're going to have a go. And like I said, the pikeys and travelers are renowned for this. And it has caused comedy gold because they used to film. So after film cameras became widely available, like VHSs and shit like that.
Yeah.
In order to issue these challenges, pikeys and travelers would film themselves effectively doing, wrestling promos?
Yeah.
Adam, you're familiar with wrestling promos, right?
Of course I am.
So, calls are redneck wrestling promos.
Nice.
That is the best redneck Irish wrestling promos. That is the best way of summing them up because it is straight up. You fucking disrespect me. You fucking disrespect me. I'll come up to your place. I'll fuck your mother. I will bust up your goddamn jaw. You won't even be able to eat. I will break all your teeth out. You'll be taking all your meals liquefied through a fucking straw. Do you understand me, boy? Do you understand the amount of hell that I will rain down upon you because you decided that you would call me a bit of a twat? Do you fucking understand the shit that you just stepped in? You goddamn micro-brained imbecile. You do not get what you just fucking did. You aren't ready for this shit. If you think that you're ready for this shit, if you think that you're hard enough, fucking come at me. We will settle this tonight in this area. Just come here. No, don't bring any of your buddies. You don't need your buddies, right? You're so big and tough. But now, come and see me face to face, man to man, and we will just fucking set this all out. That is effectively the sort of shit that you get with pikey calls. And like I said, this is something that there's a certain subcategory in Irish and Scottish culture that kind of had this tradition. And they've had this tradition for fucking ages.
Yeah.
Nice. Pete binge watched a bunch of WWE midget videos with friends.
Yeah.
Glorious. But yeah. Then a lot of these people, when they came to the States, because they had these very confrontational, effectively clan-like setups, and not clan as in spelled with a K, but clan as in like tribal. And that culture ended up becoming fairly spread out throughout the South. And a lot of what we look at as the inner city gang culture, yeah, that's effectively just a copy and paste of the bullshit from the mix and max that were kind of the lower status mix and max that came over. For those who don't know what a mick and a mac are, you never want to call a mick a mac or a mac a mick. That's how you start a fight. And micks are Irish, macs are Scots.
So it sounds to me, if I could take some liberties with it, that the South was kind of like the colonials, Australia.
Kind of.
They're like, nah, you guys go down there.
Yeah, there were a lot of the southern, literally, a lot of the southern states did start out as prison colonies. It wasn't just Australia that was prison colonies. Let me quickly double check. I want to say it was the Carolinas.
Watch midgets do stuff. No, I don't think I will. Oh shit! I don't know if it's real or not. Well, never mind.
So let's see. The
Forgot
penal
my lie.
colonies.
Oh, that would have been bad.
Let's see. Where are the penal colonies that were in the... It was... Okay, Georgia was one of the ones that was a penal colony.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's a number of the other states were penal colonies where they came in several different forms. Some of them were more hard crime penal colonies. Some of them were debtor penal colonies. And everyone's familiar with debtors' prisons, right?
Wait, what?
Oh, maybe. Are you familiar with what debtors' prisons were?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, some of the colonies were debtors' prisons, debtors' penal colonies. Some of them were more hard crime penal colonies. But that was something that was really fucking common. Like I said, pretty much the entirety of Georgia was founded as a penal colony. And it was meant to be a combo of the more serious as well as just debtors' colonies. Which is also where you get... Have any of you heard... what is it? Serving the King's Seven, I think was the turn of phrase?
No, I haven't.
Let me quickly make
Seven
sure.
what?
It was...
Shang-Chi and the Seven Rings.
There was a specific time period that, if I remember correctly, it was Serving the King's Seven was a way of referring to it. Where if you were in debt, not to an individual, but to the crown itself, they would sometimes sell your debt to work in one of these colonies.
Yeah.
And you would be serving, I want to say it was the King's Seven. I could be wrong. It might have been a different type or...
Instead of it going to tax
but
bill collections, you got to go to work for it. You got to pay.
Yeah, effectively, they would sell them into a form of slavery, but it was a form of slavery that had a very specific time frame.
Yeah, you had some. It wasn't slavery, but it was slavery. But it just, you had a little bit more leeway. Just like, if
so, the idea that it wasn't slavery is a bit difficult to say yes to, because many of the worst excesses of slavery that we identify as part of slavery were part of this particular form of servitude, because it wasn't just a straight up indentured servitude. It went beyond indentured servitude.
I wasn't implying that. I was implying more so the viewpoint of it. They weren't looked at the same way.
Oh, they were in many respects. There were laws about how you couldn't breed your whites and your blacks.
Huh.
Which, it was straight up, you cannot breed your white property, your Serving the King's Seven, with the black slaves that were starting to appear at the time. Because there was actually a thought process behind some of the people that got these particular sorts of slaves, or whatever the fuck term you want to use. It becomes so goddamn PC that some people get, well, you can't really use slave. Well, you can whip them, you can hang them, you can breed them, you tell them where to live, you tell them what to eat, you tell them how to do the work. What's the difference? And there's, like I said, it started out with there's a difference in the length of service, but even that was very wishy-washy. It wasn't even as set down as it was for indentured servants, and indentured servants are renowned for being extremely wishy-washy. And debtors, not debtors, Pete, debtors in prison and debtors colonies is when someone goes into debt. They borrow money to such an extent that if it's from just Joe Schmo from Idaho, you borrow money from Joe Schmo. Time comes for you to make good on the amount that you should pay back. You can't. So if we still allowed this, Joe Schmo would then go, okay, I now get to tell you how to work, where to work, and all that. You are now considered an indentured servant. Debtors' prisons was when someone went to the point where they weren't even thought fit to be an indentured servant. So they were sent to a prison, and this was typically a industry prison, as they're now called, or a work camp or work prison, as was a more archaic term, where you would be forced to work until such time as your debt had been repaid. And it was possible to go into debt to the crown, not just to individual.
Yeah.
That's what debtors' prisons are. And that's debtors, not debtors. Though they sound fairly similar when you say them quickly, because debtors.
Is it true that a lot of indentured servants didn't survive?
But
say again?
Is it true that?
Oh, go ahead.
Is it true that indentured servants didn't survive very often?
Oh yeah, there was a massive number of, for example, there was a certain portion of Ireland that ended up coming to the U.S. due to indentured servitude.
Yeah.
And a vast majority of them died in the crossing.
Hey, check.
Because they were maintained in very similar fashions to the triangular trade.
Yeah.
But again, some people get really bent out of shape when you start saying this, and they say, well, you can't really compare that because they signed a contract. Okay, I suppose, but when that contract was very easily violated in such a way that it wasn't revoked, and when they could tell you where to live, they could break up families, they could tell you who to sleep with, who to produce offspring with, where to work, where to live. They controlled everything that came to it. It tends to be a bit of a, there's a, I always flip the phrase, it's a difference without a distinction, right? Or is it a distinction without a difference?
The difference being is there was a group of people who were put into slavery because of the debt they owed, but they can eventually be freed from that debt and repay it. And there's a difference between that and the people who were captured in slavery, sold in a slave market, and then fucking bought it. There's a difference, dude. Come on, like this. Yeah, they both were treated the same, but at the end of the day, the debtored slaves, they got to get off free once they paid off their debt.
That's what I was saying, Adam, that when you actually look into how that worked, on paper, yes. In practice, no.
Yeah. They probably never paid off their debt, you know?
Yeah, there were thousands of ways to make what was a contract for a specific time frame.
Jeez. Okay, now that just sounds like you're pushing the core.
Oh, no, it's...
Come on, man. Get out of here. Get out of here with that shit.
It is absolutely something that happened.
And okay, so
like I said, it was to the point where
it was such a large number of these indentured servitude people, white people, who were going around.
Some of them were
and hold on,
and
let me. I'm not saying this to dismiss, any of this. I'm not saying that there wasn't these people out there. I'm just saying it was there. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of people trying to lump like small contingents of groups into like a larger thing and be like, oh yeah, see, it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, it kind of is, but it's not really. I mean, we gotta at least have these distinctions.
Adam, the population of Ireland in this time frame was reduced by 2/3.
And they all came to America?
They were sold to various colonies, yes.
And so when in 1864, when they got freed, there was a bunch of Irish people who got freed.
The ones that ended up lasting the longest in servitude did not last the longest in servitude in the American colonies. They ended up lasting the longest in servitude in a lot of the island colonies. So Bahama, for instance, when they had their slave rebellion, it was a bunch of black slaves and Irish slaves, yes.
Well, I'm strictly talking America. I'm not talking about...
Well, I could trace my heritage back to Irish indigenous servitude, so...
And again, I'm not trying to, like I said, I'm not...
When it comes to the American ones, the reason why they fell out of vogue was their cost was greater than importing African slaves. So they were priced out of the market.
Yeah.
And that
so
disproves me how. That just kind of proves my point. Like it
doesn't prove your point at all, because
it was a thing that happened.
The Africans just were cheaper than the Irish.
Yeah, they were cheaper, so they got priced out, and that's what I mean. Like, and eventually, when they stopped the slave trade, they weren't even being able to be purchased, and if they weren't being able to be bred.
Yeah, but even after slave trade, they still had indentured servitude.
Yes, I agree.
And Adam,
but it's not. I don't know. It's just I just don't. How the fuck did we get here?
Well, I was talking about how the cultures ended up mixing, and we ended up with the modern kind of gang-oriented culture in certain areas.
No, I mean, I would have pinned it on the agricultural climate type as opposed to the industrial climate type. But yeah, I guess that works too.
It wasn't the industrial, because, like I said, this was in the South that this was happening predominantly.
No. That's what I mean. Like there was a lot more black folk in the South. They adapted this agrarian type lifestyle,
yes, which
and
is
it just grew out.
Effectively a descending culture from the Celt cultures that I mentioned, because this is common in Ireland and Scotland in certain subcultures, and both those subcultures were overrepresented in the American South. So it ended up crossing the cultural bounds, let's say, and just became kind of almost the endemic culture of the South for an extended period of time. Then when black people moved north, they carried that portion of the culture with them.
And that's where I kind of branched off from where Sean was going with it, because he was saying that that's where it was coming from, but I would say that he was including, like, yeah, there's white people who act like that too, but I would say it's a culture thing. If you grow up in an area, you're gonna act like how everybody else acts in that area. So I would branch off and say the Southern culture kind of just grows that type of mentality, and
I was just laying out how that culture came to be in the first place, was where we got off onto that tangent. Because that's where I was going with the pikey calls and whatnot. Which, by the way, I sent you a video of a subtitled pikey fight call out.
Yeah, I was watching that earlier. It was funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, they're effectively Irish gypsy wrestling promos is the best way to explain fight calls to people that aren't familiar with them but familiar with wrestling. And Yeah, it is absolutely a cultural thing now, which is one of the reasons why, again, it pisses me off when people say that they have a solution to a problem, and then when you actually work through the logic of their solution, it not only does not solve the problem, but it leaves people that are included in that are also victims to that problem without any sort of assistance. Because if you're trying to solve the problem, then target that problem and the people affected by that problem, not just...
Well, most people don't want to fix the problems. They put band-aids on it, like the minimum wage thing, you know.
Yep. Well, hold on, Sanguine, are you speaking off the cuff?
Yeah, entirely,
bro. Because that just reminds me of the other thing I wanted to talk about. Oh shit! Damn it! It fucking just left me. It was about. Oh yeah. Eric July agreeing with Sarah Silverman, and why, like, because he had like
divorce bullshit.
And they were like talking about it. And it's just funny that we were talking about the 1800s, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, yo, do you not realize that that's exactly what the South
Civil
proclaimed
War
in this? Yeah, like that's like it was the rich elites that were scared of losing their income, and they swindled a bunch of people into joining their cause to fight the fucking union. Like, do you realize, like, yeah, but you can be America one and we can be America. It's like, no, we've already had this discussion.
Yep.
This is not a thing. Like, because you understand that eventually it dies down. Like, you won't be able to, like, the tariffs alone would be like disastrous on these, like, on each other, on both sides. It would just not work.
Yeah,
you know?
Neither side would come out without any scars, and one side would definitely get a savaging.
Yeah.
And I don't get how someone could think that it would not end up that way, because at the very best case scenario, absolute best case scenario, it's a delayed Civil War Part 2. Worst case scenario, it's an immediate Civil War Part 2. It's not Civil War, because no, you're dividing a nation that has become so used to being reliant upon each other into 2 to 3 other nations that historically does not work out well.
Well, that's why, like, because when young Ripa was talking, he was like, 50 individual states, we work together, and it's like, he was kind of steering it towards, like, Europe works together. It's like, bro, but that's what our federal government does for us. That's what tethers us all together. So it's supposed to be, like, very incredibly limited so that we can conduct business state by state.
But those powers not enumerated and given to the federal government are held by the state. Yeah,
exactly. But we shouldn't have to worry about our truck drivers going from one state to the other. Wisconsin's not going to be worried about delivering cheese to Illinois because whether or not this motherfucker has a vaccine pass. That's just going to hold shit up. That's holding up commerce. And right there, it's just it doesn't work if you just look at it. But again, these people, they don't. This is the problem. Learn your history, people. Oh, and that was the other thing about the schooling system, because they were sitting there like, whoa, what do we do? It's like, look, it's 2 tiers. We got to teach the children the important shit, like, right? Like our civics, how to maintain a balanced household, how to take care of yourself.
And we need to do it at a point where every child is held on that edge of comfort and discomfort when it comes to education, so that they actually learn how to learn.
Yes, so they learn it. But at the end of but for the short term solution is we got to start teaching adults to become more responsible and start taking care of their own bullshit and stop acting like you're forever young. Bro, you got to fucking you have to be what's it called?
But I want to be a Toys R Us kid forever.
Well, everybody you have to be an inspiration for people. You have to be something that the children who are learning what the fuck life is, they can look at you and be like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, and not it's that's why it pisses me off when I see these people go off and it's like, oh, you just got to do that. Oh, it's like, bro, it's multifaceted and you got to tackle it multifaceted. You have to attack it from multiple angles. You cannot just sit there and be like, well, no, we're gonna charge right here and hope for the best. That's not gonna work. Oh, you know what? We're gonna wait for everybody to fucking charge. Well, everybody's sitting there waiting for everybody else to charge. They're not gonna charge. They're gonna fucking they're gonna wait. You know, like, we have to be active and move cohesively as individually, as triple axes. We have to be able to fucking look. Oh, what was that fucking battle? Romans versus Greeks, and the Romans were marching up the hill.
The one that proved the century style versus the phalanx style?
Yeah, the 1 century, like, he noticed that there was something up on the right flank, and he's like, hey, let's go this way. He fucking led his unit over that way, and they still don't know his name. But you know what? That's exactly what you need to do. You need to be able to look at the fucking field in front of you, pay a fucking attention, and then make the right decisions on it and act on it. You have to act on it. Carpe diem.
Part of that is also not getting to the point where you aren't allowed to think certain thoughts or ask certain questions. You always need to be able to think and ask. And this is one place that our education system has really fucked up.
Yep.
Because we have a lot of teachers that seem to almost live in fear of their student asking a question that they don't want their student to ask.
Because they can't answer it.
Yep. And
I want to know how becoming a teacher became so easy. Because honestly, sign me up. I will gladly be a history teacher. And there would be you would learn nothing but history. And they would learn it and they would understand it because they would be entertained with it. And that's honestly, like, I don't understand. Well, again, that's part of the illusion is a lot of these teachers, they got into these positions because the parents were distracted with other shit. And not to say that they were distracted with bad shit, they were just probably worried about paying bills, doing their shit.
And one of the happiest moments that a teacher should have is when they are asked a question that they have to go, I don't know. I need to look into that. That should be one of the moments that teachers look forward to. But for some fucking reason, we have a crop of teachers that seem to dread ever having to say that.
I know he doesn't teach anything, I guess, academic, you can say, but my choir teacher, he used to, be a vocalist. He performed and all that. And, there's still people from my old magical troupe who will still go to his house just to chat with him because he inspired a lot of us to practice our vocals, to work on on bettering ourselves in terms of singing. And I mean, I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him in ages. Hope he's doing well. God bless you. But some of the people that I talk to, yeah, they'll oh yeah, I still go over to his house, and say hi, just see how he's doing. And it's like, that is the respect. And his wife was a teacher too, and I'm pretty sure they, say hi to her too.
Mm-hmm.
That is the respect that I think a teacher should strive for, as opposed to one of these nutcases who are out there like, oh yeah, gotta radicalize them. It's like, bro, you're supposed to be teaching them math. You should want them to be able to fucking work out an equation without using a calculator, dude. Like, what are you fucking doing? But like, I don't know. I think, like I said, it's gotten so crazy that I can only hope that more and more people are realizing this and like, what the fuck is going on, dude?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had some fantastic goddamn teachers, and I had some teachers that were unbelievably horrendous at being teachers as well.
Oh, hell yeah.
One of my best teachers that I ever had was a math teacher whose father was also a math teacher at the same high school. It was kind of strange that they ended up working at the same high school, but they worked at the same high school. Both of them were absolutely amazing math teachers. And one of the things that was massive about how good of a teacher he was the fact that if someone came up with a way of doing the problem other than the way that he was teaching the problem, he would have them explain the way that they went through it. If he knew off the top of his head that that's a way that works, he would go, yep, that works, and you can continue using that. If it was a way that he knew, well, it's kind of a fluke that it works for this specific problem, so don't use this as your go-to method, because 9 times out of 10, it will get the wrong answer. He would tell the person that. And if he looked at the way that they did the problem and he went, I have no clue if this fucking works, he would go, okay, don't be committed to doing it this way just yet. Give me until tomorrow. And he would go home that day and he would write down the way that the problem was done. He would go home and he would work through a shit ton of problems using that method. And if they worked, he would come back and say, yep, that way apparently works. Yeah. And he would also try to figure out how it worked, not just that it worked, but how is there a standard name for it? And then would come back and let the student know that yep, this works, you can use it, keep it on, it's good to go. Or he would come back and go, okay, so it works in like 25%, 50%, 75%, but not all the problems. So this is not a valid way. I'd advise not using it. And he would do that constantly. And his father did the same thing, because my brother was in the father's class when he was at that high school. And apparently, I've talked about how each of my siblings has a knack, right?
Yeah.
And my brother's is math just makes sense to him. And by math just makes sense to him, I mean math makes fucking sense to him as much as reading simple sentences makes sense to a lot of other people. Because in high school, he was apparently doing a graduate level way of solving a problem that he just looked at the problem and went, oh, this is how I do this. He was never taught that approach. He didn't know the name of that approach. This instructor went, okay, how did you do this problem? Because my brother said that he didn't do it in the way that the instructor was demonstrating it. The instructor went and did what I said his son does, went home with the way that the problem was done and started working it through a bunch of different ways and was looking at it going, okay, it works. Fuck me if I know why or what the hell it's called, but it works. And he apparently had a buddy from when he was in college that was a mathematician and hit up that buddy going, okay, so one of my students did something that it works. I know it works. I don't know how it works, and I don't know what the fuck it is. And his buddy looked at it and went, is this child's family member like a mathematician? Graduate mathematician or some shit? Because, yeah, it's this method. Here's how it works. Here's the breakdown. And worked through with the instructor how that particular way of solving the problem worked. And the instructor came back the next day and went, okay, so yeah, that does work. No clue how you know it. None of your family members are no, okay, but I didn't think so. Shit. Not sure how you know it, but this is what you were doing. Here's the explanation. And when you have a teacher that's willing to do that, it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I'm usually just a jack of all trades, master of none, you know.
I had other teachers that were amazing. I had my forensic pathology teacher was an absolute madwoman in the best possible way. You know how lab rooms have their kind of like storage closet area in high schools, right? Everyone's familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So this instructor's storage closet was filled with Barbie doll crime scenes.
Nice.
Because this instructor had it became kind of a hobby for this class that she would make up a bunch of crime scene dioramas using Barbies, G.I. Joes, and shit like that. But some of them were of her own imagination. Some of them were based on actual crime scenes. And part of the course was we would get one of these crime scene dioramas and we would have to work through what happened. And we could request certain bits of documentation from the crime scene. So if you had a person who had no obvious wounds, you could ask, so, is there a tox report for this one? And she'd go, yes, there is. And she'd hand you the tox report, which she mocked up, and it would have the various drugs that might be in the system or come back negative for the drugs, all that type of shit. And you would get different pieces of evidence. So you would have to ask for the backing documentation for your crime scene. And this teacher would just have that information. And it was one of her ways of getting people interested in the topic and then also making sure that they thought through the topic in the way that they should. Because if someone didn't ask for a tox report, then they didn't actually have all the information. Now, they might have been able to still get a right enough answer in their breakdown of the crime scene, but it was an incomplete answer. And she would grade based on not just how accurately our assessment of the crime scene was done, but also on how thoroughly. So if we really should have asked for a tox report and we didn't, we'd get marked down for that. If we said that there was a wound to the upper right abdominal quadrant, but it was on the lower left abdominal quadrant, we would get points off for that. Absolutely fascinating, slightly mad in the best possible ways instructor. And then I had, on the other end of the spectrum, the biology instructor from high school that very first day of class, in his best Ben Stein impression, talked about how, in this class, we will at no point be using scalpels, knives, pointed end scissors, open flames, closed flames, lamps, lanterns. And he just listed off everything that is fun. And just to be safe, he also said, we will not be doing any dissections. We won't be watching any dissection videos. We won't.
So what did you do?
Effectively read a textbook.
Oh, God. Takes all the fun out of science, huh?
Yeah. If my only exposure to science had been my biology class in high school, I would fucking hate science. But I thankfully had a lot of really good exposure to science, which kept me interested. But for a while, I did have a distaste for biology, which is amusing because now biology is my bread and butter.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of times a teacher can give you passion or take your passion away, depending on how they do things.
In the very least, leave a lasting memory. Could I share 2 stories real quick?
Absolutely.
First one is my 4th grade teacher. Now, I don't really recall a lot. And I don't recall why I was punished so, but her punishment was to write a page out of the dictionary.
Ah.
And
did you get to pick the page at least?
Nope. And it was random. And perhaps I should have her thanks for nice vocabulary at this day. I don't know.
Did you get a good page when you had to do it? Did you ever end up with like the page with fuckery?
No, she made sure to avoid that, but
that's a shame.
I did write a lot of pages. And like I said, I don't recall why. I'm pretty
You're the class clown?
Yeah. But the thing is, I never really of course I was like, man, I don't like her, man. But the funny thing is, when I was in art school, turns out she went to my parents' church, and so my mom and her are, well, I wouldn't say they're good friends, but they know each other, enough that she still sends letters and, hey, hope you're doing well and blah blah blah. And it's just funny because she wasn't, back in the day when I was a kid, I was thinking she was doing it because she's mean, but it was just, I was an asshole. But the other teacher, it was 2. And I think the only reason I remember them is because one, it was 2 classes together. It was social studies and American history, and they were pretty funny. So I always imagined them like a Penn and Teller type thing, but also around that time was when 9/11 happened. So I remember looking at the kid next to me like, oh shit, and he's like, oh, the Russians are throwing blimps at us or some shit. What is this, red alert? Get out of here. But
you really have to worry about the Brotherhood in that case.
Yeah. Well, they would have painted the swastikas or the hammer and sickles on it, just to be extra devious. But no, I've had other teachers that I could share stories. I wouldn't share them live, but I could sure share some stories.
By the way, damn it, Adam, now I just have Tim Curry to spice.
One of my English teachers in high school got me into reading because she gave me a Orson Scott card Ender's Game.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, your story about punishment reminded me of what happened when I was in 3rd grade. For half the year, anytime that I was in class, I had to be sitting on my hands.
You were a fidgeter?
No, I was not. I had the nasty habit, apparently, of answering questions and asking the teacher why they were saying something wrong.
Damn.
Yeah, it started when it was in a science class, and the teacher said that there were 3 states of matter. Of course, the ones that she mentioned were solid, liquid, gas. The problem is there were 4 states of matter.
Yeah.
So I asked, why is our textbook outdated? There's 4 states of matter. She argued with me. I did not back down from there's 4 states of matter.
What's the proceeded. The fourth is plasma, right?
Yep. Yeah. And this argument lasted effectively half a year until another teacher went to a science center and heard there's 4 states of matter. And they came back and they went, actually, there's 4 states of matter. It's plasma. And the teacher never really apologized for the way that she'd acted, nor did she say that she was wrong. She just at another point said there's 4 states of matter, as if she had never said that there were 3 states. Only problem was it was a week after the 5th state of matter was successfully produced.
Oh.
Because
I did not know.
There's now 5 states of matter. There's solid, liquid, gas, plasma, and the Bose-Einstein condensate. Which is a super solid.
That's new to me, though. I didn't know about that.
Yep. It was first theorized by Einstein and then was successfully produced by Bose.
Nice.
It is something that is not found in the wild, but can be produced in laboratory currently.
Okay. I always hate when people say, trust the science. That's not how science works,
Science is a process, and the thing that pisses me off, and I've said this many times before, everyone always talks about the scientific consensus. They're leaving off the most important word in that phrase every fucking time.
Yeah.
The begrudging scientific consensus. It isn't worth a goddamn fart in the wind unless people are trying and failing to disprove it.
Yeah.
If people have tried and failed time and time and time again to disprove it, so they've reached a point where they're going, okay, yeah, fuck, can't find out if it's wrong or how it's wrong. So I guess we're going to say that it's right until we can.
Yeah.
And that's what it's supposed to be. That's how every major step in science has been.
Hey, Jack.
Goddamn, look at the theory of evolution, which for those who do it's just a theory. No, you're using the colloquial theory. Scientific theory is entirely fucking different. Do you guys know the difference between scientific and colloquial?
Not really.
So, theory in the colloquial sense means that you have a hunch, right?
Yeah.
Like, I have a theory that these 2 flavors will go amazingly. I'm going to try that out. That's a colloquial theory. A scientific theory is very different. So, one of the other things that people tend to compare it to is law, because when people are talking about scientific laws, they don't know what a scientific law is versus what's a theory. So it's easiest to explain with gravity. Do you know what the law of gravity is?
Off the top of my head, no.
The law of gravity... go ahead, Adam.
Apples?
It can be demonstrated with apples.
Yeah.
The law of gravity is that two masses attract each other. That's the entirety of the law of gravity.
So the bigger mass pulls in the smaller mass?
That's how it functions, yes.
Yeah.
They're both pulling on each other, but the one that's smaller gets moved more than the one that's bigger.
Yeah.
Because conservation momentum and the sizes, everything like that. Everything else works into it. So that's the law of gravity. The law of gravity is fucking useless.
How so?
Because if you told someone that two masses attract each other, what's the next logical question?
I'm not sure.
How?
Oh, yeah. That would be
or why? Or at least, how does this work?
Yeah.
Do you know what the answer that the law of gravity has to that?
They don't know. Yeah.
Can you guess what takes the place of answering that question?
What, God did it?
No. Fuck that. No God of the Gaps bullshit here.
Yeah.
It goes to the theory of gravity. The theory of gravity is the best explanation that has not been disproven. Or at least the current theory of gravity is the best explanation that has not been disproven and has the greatest predictive power. So those are the important parts of a theory. It has to not be refuted in order to be the most accurate theory, not have any refutations, and have high predictive power.
Yeah.
So we've gone through several different theories of gravity. The most well-known early theory of gravity is, of course, Newtonian. People know Newtonian gravity. At least you've heard the term, right?
I heard it, but I'm not 100% know about it, though.
So that one works really well in two-body problems. So you can figure out the gravitational attraction between you and the Earth with Newtonian gravity really well. You can determine the attraction between the moon and the Earth really well. It becomes muddy when you try to figure out the gravitational attraction between the moon, you, and Earth. But you can jerry-rig equations to do so. But it has certain points where it breaks down.
Yeah.
And its main breakdown is in the three-body problem, and anything beyond three bodies, of course. So there were points where we were going, okay, we don't know how to fit this, and we tried fitting it in a bunch of ways, and there were a number of predictions from Newtonian theory of gravity that proved accurate. Like there were planets that we found based on Newtonian gravity.
Yeah.
But we couldn't prove other things. In fact, we disproved some of the other predictions. Or rather, we proved those other predictions not to be accurate. That's a better way of phrasing that.
Yeah.
So there were some issues. So it was still the best theory that we had at the time. It was the Newtonian theory of gravity. But people kept on working on trying to come up with a better one. So we were able to come up with a better one, which is the Einstein theory of gravity. Sometimes it's worked into Einstein's relativity because there's certain aspects that do blend between the two. But really just breaking it off into its own, Einstein's theory of gravity works out much better. Because it solves a lot of the problems that Newton's theory had, answers those, can also answer all the problems that Newton's theory could answer. And really, when you simplify down the way of figuring out those problems when looking at Einstein's theory, you end up with Newtonian theory. So, Newtonian theory, still useful in certain respects, but Einstein's had much better utility. Also, it made a bunch of predictions. One of the predictions was gravitational lensing. Have either of you heard of gravitational lensing?
Nope.
Adam, have you heard of gravitational lensing?
I have not.
Okay, so gravitational lensing is the idea that a sufficiently large mass can bend light.
Well, doesn't black holes bend light? Because it's high gravity?
That's one of the examples, yes. Yeah. And this bending of light can allow you to kind of see into an area where you really shouldn't be able to see based on the planet being there or the mass being there, because it curves it around. So we were able to demonstrate gravitational lensing. And we were able to demonstrate it a number of times.
Nice.
We've been able to predict eclipses, and eclipses was one of the examples of gravitational lensing, if I remember correctly, that we were able to demonstrate. We've been able to demonstrate it in deep space as well. We've been able to demonstrate just an ungodly number of things that were predicted by Einstein's theory, including the other planets that we didn't know existed in our solar system. We predicted them using the theory, and then we were able to demonstrate, yep, they're fucking there.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Massive predictive power. It, again, has some spots where we're going, okay, it kind of breaks down here and there, which is why we're still working on a better theory of gravity, and there's a number of hopeful contenders for that.
Well, I don't think you ever stop asking questions in science, even if you...
No, well, I will say yes and no. So you have certain questions that, think of it like a infinite puzzle. So you can picture a jigsaw puzzle in your head. Then picture that this jigsaw puzzle stretches or has enough pieces that it could stretch farther than your eye can see. So if you have part of the puzzle put together, let's say you have a square of puzzle that's missing a few interior pieces.
Yep.
Let's just make it simple, a 2 foot by 2 foot square. So if you find the interior pieces, you can reach a point where you've completed that entire 2 foot by 2 foot square, right?
Yeah.
Because you found the interior pieces. By putting in those interior pieces, did that tell you any of the additional pieces in order to expand your 2 foot by 2 foot? Because in the question, it's their interior pieces, right? The answer would be no. Because the only pieces that would tell you about the surrounding pieces would be pieces that were exterior pieces. Interior pieces, you can patch up that section, and eventually, once you have that section complete, you can't really go, okay, so what does this section tell me about this piece? It becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
Then there's other pieces that you could find, like the peripheral pieces, the external pieces, that the moment that you put down one of those pieces, well, suddenly you have a number of other pieces that you've just gone, okay, there's more to this, because I can tell that this has a cut in here, which means that there's going to be a piece that has a bit that protrudes there. It has a sign that pokes out there, so then there's a piece that has a cut in that goes into, and then it has this section, which means that this will fit that, and then so you get more information about the surrounding puzzle.
Yeah.
So there's scientific discoveries that just kind of fill a hole in something that was 90% known, but not entirely known. A good example of this is if you're talking about how many different species are there on the planet. There's not an infinite number of species. We can all admit that, right?
Yeah, they're finite.
So with every species that you find on Earth, the number of species that you can find on Earth, the number of novel species that you can find on Earth decreases. So once you've discovered all the species on Earth, there's no more question of, are there additional species on Earth? Because the answer becomes no. Then there's other things that, yeah, they just massively branch out, and those are the peripheral discoveries. So when you're talking about space exploration, yeah, every little bit of space exploration that we get gives another, what if we question?
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other examples of that. You go macro, you go micro, you get a bunch of those questions. There's certain things, though, that it doesn't really have that constant expansion. I don't think you've reached a hard stop in any of them, but logically, there's a number of them that will have a hard stop.
Yeah. Well, I remember a couple weeks back, I got in an argument on Twitter about peer review. And I told him, it's like scientist one says, does it look right? And scientist two says, yeah, it looks right. Peer review done, you know? And he said, that's not how it works. And I showed him the definition. And they're like, yeah.
It's more involved than that.
Yeah, I know.
It should be more involved than that. Let me phrase it that way, because that is a more accurate way of phrasing it. It should be more involved with that. You have certain journals that end up glad-handing.
Yeah.
And everyone's familiar with the phrase glad-handing, right?
Mostly.
I just want to make sure, because as I'm saying it, I'm going, I just realized I haven't heard anyone say that in a number of years.
What the hell's a gland handling?
Okay, glad-handing is when someone almost disingenuously is overly nice, and it's in an attempt to get something that they want.
Yeah.
So politicians are constantly glad-handing.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Spud.
Because they will be obsequious little shits to get what they want.
Oh, yeah. And they'll always want more power.
Yep. So if someone is... The journals that end up glad-handing, what they do is they want their journals to be published. Or their... Not journals. Their articles to be published.
Yeah.
So they kind of get by to get by. Yeah, but networking can be done honestly. Glad-handing, by definition, is not. So, well, yeah, people are kind of phasing it out and using networking euphemistically to be glad-handing. Glad-handing is its own thing. And it should stay its own thing. And people need to use glad-handing more, just like I am a huge proponent that people need to resurrect everything's tickety-boo. Because that is a hilarious thing to say.
Yeah.
People need to do it more. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Just if anyone asks how you're doing and everything is going well, you're doing good, everything's tickety-boo. But you have certain journals that, yeah, they are Mickey Mouse journals, is how they're often referred to.
Yeah.
and they just publish shit to publish shit.
Kind of like TEDx, you know?
Yeah, they are. TEDx is, if TEDx was a journal, TEDx would be a Mickey Mouse journal.
Yeah.
Because they do not give a shit. And there's a bunch of journals that unfortunately are that way. You have more prestigious journals that avoid being that way for the most part, thankfully. Every now and then they fuck up. Like, everyone has heard me rant about the Wakefield paper, right?
I believe so.
It's the vaccines cause autism paper.
Oh, yeah.
That one was actually published in perhaps the most prestigious biology journal, Nature. It got published in Nature, and I think it got published in the Lancet as well. Both Nature and the Lancet, if I remember correctly, it was Nature and the Lancet. It might have just been the Lancet now that I'm saying it. But they got published in a extremely reputable journal. Then other people pointed out, you do realize this is completely full of holes and it makes your journal look bad. So it got pulled. And the fact that they were willing to pull it, that's a good sign. The fact that it got through it all, not really a good sign. The fact that once it was made painfully clear that, yeah, this is fucked, they did pull it. Whereas there's a bunch of journals that they don't.
Yeah.
And this is where you guys know Peter Boghossian, right?
I don't.
With his last name. Do you know Gadsad?
Yeah.
So Boghossian and Gadsad and a number of others, if I remember correctly, Gadsad was part of this, looked at a bunch of psychological, sociological, and soft science journals and tried to replicate the experiments in them.
Yeah.
They found out that a third of them they were able to successfully replicate.
Only a third, wow.
A third. And then they also wrote a bunch of fake journal articles to see how shit the journal process was. So they
I remember something like that, yeah.
To get things published, like taking a chapter of Mein Kampf and substituting white men for everywhere that Jews were mentioned. And
yeah, I remember that one.
Women for everywhere that Germans or Aryans were mentioned.
Yeah. And it got published, right?
Bunch of their journals got through their peer review process, which was not a good sign.
Yeah. That's why I don't want to say, people say it's peer reviewed, like, that means nothing to me.
Well, it should mean something, but it's something that you have to confirm first.
Yeah.
Which is why I've said many times that when I hear about an article, I try to find the actual article, and then I look at the abstract, which an abstract for a scientific paper is effectively the summary of the paper. It is the paper in a paragraph form. So it gives you a bit of the background, not a hell of a lot, but a bit of it. It gives you the gist of what the experiment does, and then it gives you a it worked, it didn't work, but doesn't really go into a massive amount of detail. So I start with the abstract because that's a useful place to kind of get a feel. Then I skip down to the methods section, and methods is exactly what it sounds like it should be. It is where they explain how they did the paper.
Yeah,
And
most people don't ever check that thing, though.
Yep. So I skip down to methods after reading the abstract, or skimming through the abstract. Sometimes more thorough read, but normally just skim through the abstract, make sure that there's nothing that's a whoa, what the fuck.
Yeah.
Every now and then there is a whoa, what the fuck. Most of the time there is not. But then I read through the methods, make sure that the methods are all good. Sometimes they're fantastic. Sometimes they're kind of sometimes they're solid. Sometimes you look at them and you go, okay, what the fuck? Who was high while they were doing this research? And how many different substances were they high on?
Wasn't me.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a good example of a paper that had, or of 3 papers that had absolutely horrendous methods are the Wakefield paper that I already named.
Yeah.
The Seralini paper, which is the glyphosate causes cancer paper. And then the Dr. Money paper, which is the gender is entirely a social construct paper.
Oh.
It is the foundational paper of that bit of research. And it is unbelievably fucked. That particular bit of research had 100% suicide rate.
Ugh. Yeah, I remember that.
So after I read through that, if the methods check out and they seem valid, and a good example of something that I did this too, that the methods seemed really valid, and then I looked at the data and I realized, that methods section was just them bullshitting me. There's a research center that is purportedly a research center that is looking at how free a society is.
What?
Yeah, how free different societies are. So it looks at like how does the US rank to every other country in the world, and how do the other countries in the world rank to every other country, including the US.
I mean, let me guess, they said US wasn't as free as it should be?
Well, they had a bunch of different things in their methods that were really good. The one that I decided to take particular note of was, as one of the things that would subtract points from the freedom index was, and it was every section was effectively 1 through 5. In the journalism section, if you had state-controlled, so state-owned and operated media companies, that you could not get a 5. 5 was the highest. That makes perfect sense to everyone, right?
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense to me. Why, if you have state-run media, owned and operated, that you could not get a 5 in the freedom of media. The problem is that they were very selective of who they subtracted points from when it came to that.
Yeah.
So, for instance, everyone knows what the BBC is.
Yep.
England did not get a 4. England got a 5.
Damn.
Last I checked, the BBC is owned, operated, and funded by the English government.
Yeah. But they don't tell what them to put on the media, though. At least I don't think they do.
Are you applying propaganda, sir?
They had another section that was on that where it was state-dictated media.
Okay, yeah, it is different.
Yep, so they had state-dictated media, which I think the highest that you could get with state-dictated media was a 1 or 2. And then the highest that you could get by state-controlled, owned and operated, was what they said, was a 4. And then they gave a 5 to England that has state-owned and operated media.
Yeah.
Maybe that one was just a fluke. So, are you guys familiar with the CBC?
Yeah, the Canada version.
Yep. So, again, state-owned, state-operated, it got a 5. Okay. I looked at...
Well, what did America get?
America got a 4.
Really? Jeez.
So, the methods were beautiful. The problem was that they didn't actually use those methods.
Yeah.
They wrote them down, made them sound really nice, and then just kind of went, okay, Bob, put whatever number you think seems reasonable.
Yeah, they wanted their bias towards everything, you know.
Yep. Because, yeah, a bunch of European nations that have state-owned and operated media were getting 5s, despite it saying that the highest that you could get was state-owned and operated was a 4. And then America, which does not have state-owned and operated,
Nope.
got a 4. When it said that the highest rating was for a 5, was supposed to be for someone who did not have state-owned and operated.
Now, did they
Did not
explain?
have... Oh, go ahead.
Did they explain why they gave them numbers, or did they just?
They said that for England, the reason why they gave it a 5, and I only remember for the BBC, was they said due to the fairness doctrine of the BBC, they were giving it a 5. They didn't explain why that allowed them to ignore the fact that state-owned and operated maxes out at 4.
Yeah.
But they said due to the fairness doctrine of the BBC, it got a 5. Which...
I don't think they followed that doctrine very well.
Yeah, they don't really. And again, the fact that they said the highest score that it can get if it meets this is this. And then they went, okay, we're going to give it higher than that. Like, if I remember correctly, it was it Russia? Which Russia has state-owned and operated, as well as it has some editorial control.
Yeah.
And they gave that one a 3, if I remember correctly. Which they said having editorial control maxes out at 2. So they were playing really fast and loose with their rules.
Yeah.
Yes,
to get what they want.
BBC is funded by the British public, but it's funded by the British public through taxes by the English government.
Yeah. They're forced to pay for it.
Yeah. The BBC is not brought to you by viewers like you.
Yeah.
And charitable donations. It is brought to you by your tax dollar.
Yeah. And your TV
and I
license.
realize that you're cracking the shits at it, but just for those who might have found us and were unawares somehow, because fuck, people on the internet can be retarded.
People often can be retarded too.
Useful. Yeah, just people can be retarded.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Fantastic quote from one of the worst people in history, if not the worst. No, one of... I'm not going to give him the worst person in history. What luck for leaders the masses do not think.
I don't know that.
It's unfortunately one of Hitler's quotes.
Oh.
Like I said, one of the worst people in history.
Yeah. I actually read his book. It was super boring.
Yeah. It's a bunch of whinging.
Yeah.
It is very
Lots of
much in the
whinging.
grievance studies camp. But yeah. So, I read abstract, then methods, then I look at the data, make sure that the data actually follows along the methods. And if the abstract looks decent, the methods look decent, and the data seems to be following along with the methods.
Yeah.
And I will crunch some of the numbers just to make sure. Then I look at the results and the conclusion.
Yeah. Well, that's what a peer review is meant to do, right?
They're supposed to look at every section. I skipped the introduction.
Okay.
Unless I really want to delve deep, I don't read the introduction.
Okay.
And half the time I'll skim the conclusion rather than actually read. But yes, a peer review is supposed to make sure that everything is in order.
Yeah.
But they're also supposed to do so while looking at other research in that same venue and kind of seeing, okay, is this a fluke? Is this not a fluke? Is that what's going on here? So you're supposed to be knowledgeable about the subject at hand and then figure it out based on that. Which a lot of papers do kind of slip through the cracks, unfortunately. Though it is about that... Oh, actually, it's after that time.
Yeah.
How you guys feeling? Winding down? Shall we go around?
Yeah, winding down.
So
beyond that, fine. Huh?
Useless? Yep, it is 2.5 hours, apparently.
Yeah. So, you know me, have fun, because what's the point of living the air and fun?
Yeah.
Yep. It didn't feel like 2.5 hours, did it?
No.
Not really.
Adam, you're up next.
Wait, did...
Yeah, what do you mean?
Yep. He gave us standard.
Well, shit. Yeah, no, yeah. It didn't feel like it was that long. So, shit. Great conversations, you know.
Yeah.
As usual, thanks for inviting me, and as always, love y'all and God bless.
Sounds good, and goddammit, Spudgun, whilst bladders scream they need a break. And I'll leave off with my standard of if you're passionate about something, make sure that you devour it, don't let it devour you, and with that, have a good night all. The zoo is closed.
Have fun.
Adam, this is when you say goodbye.
Huh?
Say goodbye, Adam.
Oh, goodbye, Adam.
There we go.